Hi, I'm Crystal, the parenting coach. Parenting is a thing that some of us just expected to know how to do. It's not like other areas of your life where you go to school and get taught, get on-the-job training, or have mentors to help you. But now you can get that help here. I believe that your relationship with your children is one of the most important aspects of your life and the best way that you can make a positive impact on the world and on the future. I've made parental relationships my life study, and I use life coaching tools, emotional wellness tools, and connection-based parenting to build amazing relationships between parents and their children. If you want an even better relationship with your child, this podcast will help you. Take my parenting quiz at the link in the show notes. Once we know what your parenting style is, we will send some tips tailored to you and a roadmap to help you get the most out of my podcast. Creating connection and support in our homes. Language matters. Are we creating inclusive spaces in our homes, schools, and communities? Are we pushing away those who need accommodations the most? We can listen to our children and to our own inner wisdom and figure out what our kids truly need and help them to feel more connected and included. Join this conversation with my friend Siris, who is the owner of Empowering Light Language LLC, who works with busy individuals and families virtually to improve their communication and self-care, facilitated by a greater connection with their bodies, empowered by a greater awareness of how their language impacts their lives. She is very well educated. You'll hear all about her in just a minute. And on today's episode, you're going to hear how children's behavior is actually communication to us and how we can figure out what our kids are really saying. We also talk about how to create inclusivity at home and school through connection, and how we can all get on the same page as a family to create that connection within our home. We also talk about working with our children's strengths and interests to help them see their own unique magic and create that connection with the family. We talk about tuning into our yes and our no and helping our kids do the same. This was my favorite part of the episode, i.e., what is your body telling you? Hello, everyone. It is lovely to be with you here today on the Parenting Coach podcast. Again, I have an amazing interview with another amazing expert that I love to bring in experts that I actually want to know more about. I'm like, okay, tell me more about what you do. And I think this will be supportive for me. So hopefully it is just as supportive for you listeners today as well. So I have my friend Siris on the podcast today. And do you want to just introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about you and what you do?
Yeah, hi. Yes, I'm Siris Raquel Rivas-Verdejo, and my name might imply, as you might suspect, that I speak Spanish and English. So my first language is Spanish. I was born in Puerto Rico, and my dad is Dominican, so I'm half Dominican and half Puerto Rican. And I was born in Puerto Rico, but then was raised in the Chicagoland area. So very much have like Midwest vibes. And now I live in the Charlotte, North Carolina area after having about a 5-year stint in Savannah, Georgia. So I've been hopping around quite a bit, but really love Charlotte area right now. And my business, Empowering Light Language, has been around. I've been a business owner now for, I think it's 10, 20 years. I don't know, 10, 15 years. Yeah. The pandemic has sort of skewed my sense of time. But I work with individuals and families around communication and self-care. So how our communication is one of the greatest forms of self-care that we can choose, and how that actually changes our mindset and how we either create lives that work for us and are really lit up about, or the ones that kind of our language can sway us away from and take us away from.
Oh, I love that. This sounds so good. And I feel like oftentimes when you're talking to people about relationships, whether it's with their kids or with their partner or at work or whatever, communication is one of the number one things that gets brought up. Like, I need to communicate more effectively, or I don't really know, how to speak about this thing that's on my heart. So I love that that is a topic we're going to talk about today. I'd love to know, first of all, how did you get into this work? Were you just like, I'm really good at communicating, and so I'm going to share this message with the world, or how did that happen?
I definitely came out screaming and talking. Like my family, when I said I was going to be a speech language pathologist, they were like, "Oh, of course you are." Yeah,
that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
But then the other reason why was because all of my family on my mom's side, all of them stuttered. So I was around that, like people stuttering and figuring out strategies of how to do that, especially in a generation where they didn't really have speech language therapy in Puerto Rico and access to it. So you kind of just had to make your own way. And then my sister had very, very severe stuttering. So we had speech therapy for her, but she also has spina bifida, which is a congenital disorder. So she also had physical therapy and occupational therapy. And then my brother had a diaphragmatic hernia. He was born with that. And he's hard of hearing. So he has a bilateral sensory neural hearing loss. So he needed speech therapy to advocate for himself, to learn how to pronounce things better. He speaks very, very clearly given how profound his hearing loss is. Everyone comments on it. He had a really great speech therapist. So this has been my life since I was like 2 years old. And I have cousins that have autism. It's been me marinating in these energies for as long as I can remember. So when I work with families and kids, I think of them as my family. I am very personally invested. I don't take for granted that they're opening up their homes and their lives and their quirks to me. And when I'm advocating for them and when I'm supporting them, I'm thinking about what my siblings received, how they were treated, the things that worked and the things that were very dishonoring of them and really disrespectful. And making sure that the parents know their rights, because a lot of them know some, but maybe not all of their rights and what they can ask for. And then also just how they can learn how to support them in the home. Because if they have any kind of early intervention services, they miss that family approach when the kids go into schools a lot of times, unless they're doing homeschooling. And that's where I'm come in there and be like, okay, this is what they mean with what they're doing at school. And then how can you do the same stuff in what you need for your family routines?
Okay. I love that. How would somebody know if they need your services? Is it because I love that you talk about communication and all of that. And I have some family members with dyslexia, so I'm super interested in learning more about this. But is it usually you work with people with stutters? What else kind of is there to kind of look for?
A lot of it is not to be vague, but I really, especially being bilingual, a lot of times people come to me because they want someone that will honor and respect their culture. And so since I'm a specialist in multicultural and multilinguistic populations, they usually were like, oh, great. I don't feel like I have to put my culture aside for you. You get the importance of that. And I have these concerns around how my child's communicating, how they're connecting, how they're creating their lives, how I'm advocating for them, or how they are learning, because I'm a learning behavioral specialist and feeding therapist. So sometimes any of those things is for some parents, it's very urgent, especially when it's feeding, because a lot of time that's life or death. They're not getting the nutritional variety that they need, or even enough caloric intake. And they come in very concerned, and they want to make sure that they're seen as the expert that they are. They're seen as someone that is of value as part of a team and not just railroaded in the midst of whatever therapist, teacher, educator's agenda might be. And then also seeing their child as a whole person and seeing them as a gift instead of something that needs to be fixed or something that's a problem. What unfortunately my siblings got and what my family received, we were told a lot of times, both implicitly and explicitly, that the world would be a better place without them in it. Be it the world would be better if they would just shut up already and became monolingual instead of bilingual. If they just were in a corner and didn't have to deal with all these different variety of needs that they had. And my sister had learning challenges. She had fine motor challenges, so she needed the OT for that. My brother, needing to have an interpreter in the classroom was like, oh, this is intrusive to the other kids, these types of things. How is it, it's not fair that they had these accommodations and these other kids don't. The language and the things around this have changed now they're in their 30s and 40s, right? And yet there's still a lot more to go. There's a lot more possible. And so most of the time it's parents that come to me knowing more is possible, and they're not sure how to ask for it, how to approach it, how they can support what they know is possible in the home in whatever area of the child's development they have concerns in. And especially if there's more than one child, it's I'm tired of going to multiple appointments. Can I have somebody that will work whole family? And so, because I'm already kind of burnt out, I'm already overwhelmed, I'm already in the car and driving from this place to this place all the time. Can it be something where it's a one contact person that will disseminate and help me out with all these different things in a way that doesn't seem like another extra thing, that gets embedded in the routines? And that's what I love.
I feel like I remember one of my siblings talking about their kids going to these different therapies, and it was like this day, this therapy, and this day, this therapy, and this day, this therapy, and so overwhelming. I love that you help with all of those things, that you're like a behavior specialist, but then also feeding and language and communication. I have only a little experience with the feeding stuff, but I do remember one of my kids was like failure to thrive, having a really hard time. They came over and helped me with like feeding, breastfeeding, food, all the different things, like helping them learn to like suck in different ways or whatever. So, I have like a tiny little, I guess, experience with that. But the experience that I have more in is, I guess, children learning, not necessarily, I guess, communication in behaviorally, like how do I communicate what's happening inside of me for sure. But also just really struggling to learn to read, learn to, speak what they're reading out loud, even once they have learned how to do it in their mind, speaking it out. And my kiddos have gotten pretty good at communication, but I think there's also, I have one who struggles with some social anxiety. And so even though communicates well at home, maybe not necessarily communicating well with, people their age or out at the playground or whatever. So if there's anybody that's struggling with all of these things that you do, I guess, what's kind of the first step? Like, how do you help people right off the bat?
Well, I invite them to have like a consultation with me where I figure out what are they looking to have more clarity and ease with? What have they already tried? What has worked, what hasn't worked? And then they walk away right away with some tools they can immediately implement. And then we discuss if they want additional support, coaching programs, things like that. Every family is different. Coaching isn't for everybody. And different, I don't have like a one size fits all coaching program. My coaching program that I have is called Being a Different Possibility. And it's really about, it's very personalized. So it's very tailored to what the family dynamic is. I ask them to complete a questionnaire where I look at every family member, what their interests are, what their strengths are. Because when you're looking at the family, you're looking at, there's different communication styles with everybody. There's different love languages with everyone. There's different strengths and there's different interests. And so I take that all into account, even if they would like me to focus my time on maybe 1, 2, or 3 family members. I still am communicating and keeping in mind that they're interacting with these other people. There's this constellation that's happening within this family dynamic. And so I create a personalized plan after I take in this information, if they would like to move forward after that. And it's really based on them tapping into themselves as an expert. Like, what do you know? And what is your body telling you? So something that makes it a little bit different, be it when I'm working with a family or an individual, I actually use a lot of energetic tools as well, where they actually tap into their body's knowing. And one of the first things I teach them is how to get their body's yes and no, the adults or the caregivers. And then I show them how to do that with the kids so that the kids have their yes and no when they're interacting with friends, when they're picking out their clothes, when they're deciding what to eat, how much of it to eat, if they're going to go and add that extracurricular activity or not. All of this yes and no helps, because what's a yes for you is what's true for you. What's going to light you up, what's going to be sustainable and enjoyable, and that lead to the burnout. And what's a no is the stuff that makes it really heavy and sluggish and so they can even use this with testing, right? What's the answer? Is it this one? If it's multiple choice, yeah, which is the yes? And their body can tell them the answers, so they actually can be a lot faster at accessing what they know instead of having to like second guess and doubt and be like, okay, let me double check. It's like they go through things a lot faster. So I think between that and just that personalized approach, I'm pretty different out here.
Hey, this is very different. And we have to pause here because this is like my jam. Like, I really believe that we're all our own experts in life and that we tap out so much of that. We're just like, they're smarter. They have their PhD. They're the specialist. So like, let me listen to them. And so many times, I especially feel this way in behavioral therapy. We listen to somebody else that we think knows better than we do, even though our insides are screaming like, that is not okay. That is not an okay way to treat my child or a human. But we feel like we have to because that's who the government sent over, or that's who our support system is, or whatever. So I love that that's what you're pinpointing. And I just recently posted this on Instagram, like, our goal is just to believe our children, to trust our children, to know that they're their own experts also. And like, they know when they need to pee, they know when they need to eat and how much to eat of it and what foods make them feel certain ways. And, how much sleep they need. Like, if we could spend more time trusting in their yes and their no. Like it's less of us trying to mold them into, who we think they should be and more of them just showing us who they are.
Well, and on the same vein, also letting them fall. Like, cause all of us have had those moments where we know what's really a yes, but we'll choose the no anyway. And that teaches us. That's a teaching moment. That's a moment. So if you ask them, hey, is that a yes for you to have 3 scoops of ice cream? And they're like, yes.
Yeah, it is.
But it really isn't. Let them have the 3 scoops and feel what it does with their body. It's like, and afterwards have a discussion, be like, was that really a yes? Or did you just want the ice cream and you went against your body's no for that?
Totally. And we do the same thing with screens. Like we'll start at the beginning of the week, especially with my teenagers. Like, how much do you think? Like, what do you think? What do you notice? What do you feel? And I let them choose the hours. And sometimes it's a lot of hours. And at the end of the week, I'm like, okay, how did that go? Like, what's going on? Where they can really authentically see how it's affecting them.
Mm-hmm. And they can choose. I mean, that's the thing, is that they get to create their lives. And so part of the third aspect, because I work on connection with your body, with yourself, with your inner knowing, communication, and all these different realms that we're talking about, from learning, from self-confidence, interpersonal, things like that. And then there's the create. So what would you like to create with these strengths and gifts that you have? What would you like to create with this inner knowing and connection with your body? Is it a business? Is it applying it to your sports? And is it with your friends? Like, are you trying to create more friendships? So even the parents might bring a certain concern, like, oh, I really want them to thrive better at school. But it's like, and then when I talk with the kid, I'm like, what part of that is it even relevant? Is it school, or is it, oh, I just want to have more friends, or I want to feel less alone? I had a 9-year-old who I was working with, and she really wanted to build up her confidence. She was really bossy with her brother, like the example you were saying, like at home versus other places. And at school, she was very polite, but like would not participate in classroom discussions and would not really talk to anybody at recess. And she had friends, but it was in very particular situations and contexts where she would really show up fully as herself. And then by the time we stopped talking and having sessions, she was herself everywhere, to the point the parents were like, can we turn it off? I'm like, no,
it's open the door. Yeah. Oh, I love that.
I was working with her younger brother, and his was all about speech clarity and self-regulation. He needed occupational therapy, which I connected with the family to. So I do a lot of referrals, to other professionals, for the family to feel like they have a team that really has their back. So it's not all about, as much as I have all these different things I can work on, sometimes it creates more for them to be like, okay, this is your lane. And then this other person is who I see for this. And as long as we have a cohesive, united front together, it works really beautifully.
Okay. I love all of this. I would love to hear more about that yes and that no. How do you help, especially with kids, how do you help them feel that yes and that no in their body?
Well, sometimes it's feeling, sometimes it comes to them as like a visual. Like a lot of my neurodivergent people, they see things in pictures, they see things as visual. So that's one of the first ways they do it. So I'll ask them the simple question of like, okay, well, we usually do it standing up. And I have them squeeze and give themselves a hug to kind of connect to their bodies more, because they're already trying to anticipate and analyze in their head. And if you're more in your head, it's harder to get this, which is part of why any type A people, any go people who are thinking about their next appointment, it takes practice. So if you're willing to be messy with it on the way to awesome, yes. And so I'll ask with them and their bodies, hey, so what's our yes today? And they just see how their body moves, or if they get a picture, if they get a smell, a taste, a sensation, a sound, that's their yes. It could be just a sense of spaciousness and lifting. Oh, all of a sudden their face goes and smiles a little bit more, or glows a little bit more. So I had them actually do this. Since we do virtual sessions, they can see how their face changes. And I can point it out. Hey, did you see how your nose sprinkled up there? Or how you went kind of like,
yeah.
And then, okay, what's our no today? And seeing what shows up. And I love this because it can be a really lovely exercise for families to build rapport. Like, okay, what's your yes today? Like I invite them to do that before they start their day. Like as they're brushing their teeth, as they're getting ready, like, okay, what's your yes? And it can change day to day, or maybe a couple weeks in a row will be the same. And then something momentous will happen, or a life event will happen. It'll kind of shift things in their yes and no. will change, but everybody in the family's yes and no will probably show up differently. And it's a really cool way to start because it opens up discussions about, well, what else is different about each of us and where is it overlap? Like you really are having individuals within this whole group and really honoring that individuality as we're recognizing the family's yes and no. So then I also talk to the family. And if there's a leader, like a certain person that's reaching out to me, okay, if you're the leader in the family, what if you just ask, what's my family's yes? And what's my family's no? And if you would like, if you're choosing something like, oh, a new school, I had a parent that really wanted me to help them in choosing a school that would be more appropriate for their children. And I was like, all right, let's get your family's yes, let's get your family's no. And as we were looking through these different schools that they had visited, they immediately were like, oh, that's a no. Because it's not just about that one child that was going to go there. Their sibling was going to go to a different school, by the way. It affects everybody else in the family if it's a good experience for that child at that school or not. The commute, right? If this other person can go to that extracurricular activity or not because of that, the energy they come back with, all of that reverberates and ripples out to the rest of the family members. So when you have that yes and no, when you're making decisions like that, oh, family vacations, is it going to be enjoyable for everybody? Which is the one that's going to be a great fit. I just did this with my own family when we were doing some family vacation planning for the upcoming fall. We are like, okay, well, let's go together. And like, is this really going to be yes for all of us? Which is the one that's the biggest yes then. Because sometimes it's yes and then yes. And we want the biggest yes.
I love all of that. I work so much with mostly women, but also with couples. And I think we talk so much about intuition, and I'm really good at helping them determine that yes and no for themselves so that they can start trusting themselves again. But I love this idea of actually teaching our children that physicality of it also. Like, what does that energy feel like in your body? Because how safe is that for them, right? Like when they go into situations that might not be the safest, they might feel that inside, like, oh, okay, wait, I can tell this one's a yes one or a no one. And like you said, also allowing them the space to make the mistake. Because I think we're like, okay, yeah, we'll let them do their own thing, but also no, not 3 scoops of ice cream, like just like a half a scoop today, right? We pretend kind of like we like let them make the decision, but we don't really. And so allowing them to actually knowing that that is how they learn. They're going to learn by not always being kind to their sibling. They're going to learn by being a bully or being bullied. Like there are experiences in their life and in the home that are going to teach them how they want to be treated and how they want to treat others with that yes and that no inside. So I love that that's what you share with people also, instead of just coming in as the expert that knows what they're doing and like, listen to me and I'll tell you the way.
Yeah, one of the biggest things I do is I'm very good at listening to what people say and the implications of it. So I often will listen to the parents and then say, okay, do you see what you just said? Now, what message does that send you? What message does that send your child? Is that the message you want to send? And so they start listening to themselves more so that between sessions and after they're done with me, they're really realizing how their language, including their thoughts, their emotions, but also what they're saying verbally and what they're saying with their body and their actions, what that's communicating, and how impactful that is. So they really get to see all these different ways that they're impacting their own lives and how they can be better models and examples of the things that they would like to instill in their kids. And the kids still get to choose if they take it on or not, right?
Yeah, always. The last question that I would like to ask you is I'd like you to tell me a little bit more about empowered language. So on your website, I kind of read through it before we were meeting up and you talked a lot about that. Empowering language. What does that look like and how can we, I guess, do it more? Like if someone hasn't worked with you and they just kind of want to take something from this episode that they can integrate in their lives right now, what could that be?
Well, I actually created my business starting from when I was working in the schools. I worked in the Chicago public schools right out of grad school. I did a dual master's program in speech language pathology and learning disabilities. And so I was very aware of the connection of how like speech and language verbal wise was like a gateway into academic language and all these other things very early on. This is before they changed our scope of practice where they're asking for speech language pathologists to do more academic work, like working on reading and writing. Back then they weren't, but you can kind of see it coming. And I was in a classroom where about, I think it was 7 or 8 kids had profound to severe autism, and they were preschoolers. So these are 3 to 5-year-olds. And all of this, a lot of them was their first experience out of the home. A lot of them weren't in daycares or anything like that. and they're jumping right into a public school half-day program. And there would be a lot of behavioral stuff. There'd be a lot of ways that they would try to communicate to us through their behavior. Because I believe truly that behavior is communication as well. And so I often am asking, what is this behavior trying to tell me? And there was this one moment where everybody was screaming, everyone was crying, it was just pure chaos. And one of the teacher assistants in the classroom had this brilliant idea to turn on this song. And I'm so, so grateful for her to this day. I still give her credit for this. Hi, Margot, wherever you are. And she turned on this song. You might have heard it. I didn't even know the origins of the song, but it was so impactful. It was "This Little Light of Mine, I'm gonna shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine." And all of a sudden there was this hush that fell over the whole classroom. I didn't know that it was a Christian song. I didn't know. It was just like, I think there was something about, it was just, they got it. They were like, I'd like my light to shine. And it was this invitation for them to do that with this song. And they were always very affected by music anyway. It's very common. But this particular day, it was like magic. And I was like, this is the energy of the business that I'd like to create. When I went on my own and I started becoming my own business owner, I was like, this is what I'd like to have. So I chose Empowering Light Language as my business name because I wanted to empower the light within all of us using language, using the power of language. Like that this is something that can affect every aspect of your life, from your confidence to your willingness to respect yourself, to how you are an advocate and an example to other people, how you care for yourself, all of it. And so when I say empowering light language, it's really about being aware of what's true for you and what's not true for you, what's true for your family and what's not true for your family. And the more that you choose that, actually, that allows you to let your light shine. That allows for you to show up more fully and create a life that is something that resonates with you. That's like, oh, this is what I was asking for. This is what worth getting out of bed for. And it makes things easier. It's not that everything's easy, but it could be easier. It could have a lot more ease to it when we actually listen to those whispers of that inner knowing.
Oh my goodness, this is such a beautiful message. I interview so many people, and I believe this to be so true, but very infrequently is this brought up, this idea of like, we have so much inner knowing and we get to tap into it at any time. We have this deep connection with ourselves. And the more that I've been able to become that myself, the more I think it gives everyone around me permission to do that themselves, including my children. And I think I loved your story of the music, and that was the message, like this little light of mine, like it's inside of me and I want it to shine. And that as we can make those changes to really listen and trust our own inner knowing, that everything changes, right? You're like business and life, and like you have this whole plan that you lay out with them. But all of those changes can happen through really that one simple. It's not simple as in like it's easy and quick and you're going to figure it out right away. But it is simple. So thank you for that message. I would love for you just to share how people can work with you, how they can connect with you, if this is something they're feeling called to do.
Yeah, I would love that. I mean, first and foremost, anyone can email me for sure. I'd love to offer your listeners a free ebook. It's like a 9-page ready reference that I have that basically talks about some really quick tools that they can use that are very easy to implement in their home and in their own lives. And so I make it really easy because families are busy. I don't need it to be like a whole long thing. And so I'll provide you with that link and you can share it with your listeners, and they can go to my website, empoweringlightlanguage.com, or email me at empoweringlightlanguage@gmail.com. I'm on all the social media platforms. They can search my name and it'll all pop up, but whatever way is the easiest. I think for most, it's usually that. I even provide my phone numbers, which I didn't realize was a weird thing, but you can also call me. I'm in the United States, so make sure to dial 1 if you're in another country. And then it's 847-567-4978. Families can text me on there. Like I have parents that will text me after the kids are asleep. And they're like, is this too late? I was like, no, if I'm busy, my phone's on do not disturb or airplane mode. So, but that's usually when they have the brain to be like, oh, that one I want to ask. So feel free.
I love that. I love that you're just like, and here's my number, text me. So text her. Thank you. Thank you for coming on and sharing that with us. And I think that your message is profound. I think it's truth. I can feel it. When you speak, I can feel it. And I think we need more of this, especially in our homes and our families. And especially if you're dealing with kids that have, hearing problems or feeding problems or speaking problems, or all of those things can feel really heavy and can kind of feel overwhelming sometimes. So I love that now people have this support and this resource. If you love this episode, make sure to go share it with someone so that they can hear as well. And we will see you next week. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to help spread this work to the world, share this episode on social media and tag me. Send it to a friend or leave a quick rating and review below so more people can find me. If you'd like more guidance on your own parenting journey, reach out.